Well, first and foremost, thank you. Ooh, I'm loud. To all of you for showing up. I know it's rainy outside and some of you walk up the hill, so I appreciate the energy and effort you took to get up here. So many familiar faces out there for me, but for those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Jim Harbour, and I teach in the Wine Beverage Management HBM 350 class is why I'm up here today. Make sure everybody on Zoom that if you have questions, please put it in the chat, and eventually a student will read those towards the end of the class. For those of you who have the amplifier, what motivated maybe for you to be here, that will be on the last slide as well. So we have an incredible panel here today, and I'm super excited because as I created questions, I kind of created questions with each one of them in mind. And so some of them will start with them, and then we'll see the others, because they all play in the same field. So first and foremost, Sarah Harding is the general manager of Nocking Point Wines. She played a pivotal role in the winery's inception of 2012. I didn't know you were that old. The winery, not you. Joining forces with her co-founders, her twin brother Andrew Harding and actor Stephen Amell, to create a unique winery specializing in celebrity collaboration wines. Her expertise extends to cultivating partnerships with celebrities and influencers, resulting in exclusive, acclaimed collaborations. Sarah manages the winery operations along with the event venue space. Taste Room in Walla Walla and Nocking Point Wines has become a symbol of innovation. So I believe some of you actually have seen her and or her team in one of your other classes, maybe entrepreneurship a couple weeks ago. So she's back. Don Poffenroth from Dryfly Distillery in Spokane, which kind of is well, he'll tell us when you introduce one of the original distilleries here in Washington. Lifelong Spokane resident, married to Cheryl with 2 grown kids and 2 awesome grandkids. After a 20-plus years career in the food industry, culminating in his role as the director of marketing for a $3 billion company, Don decided to ditch the corporate world and jump off into entrepreneurial cliff and form Dryfly Distilling. The project started in 2005-06 area and marks Dryfly's 17th year of operation. The company has grown from 2 employees to 22, now distributes in 40 states. In 2021, Dryfly expanded and completed a $4 million project during COVID, over 19,000 square feet. So if you're in downtown Spokane, it's on the corner of Monroe and Riverside. If you've been to Spokane in your life, it used to be the old newspaper place. Okay, Old Spokesman Review. So it's a big, beautiful building right on the corner if you're up there. Dryfly produces clear and aged spirits, anywhere from 3 to 12 years old, and they have a very, very fine line of the cans. So you see a lot of that as well out there in the market. So. And thirdly, John Bryant from No Lie Brewing Company is an international recognized craft brewery built on the foundation of people, world-class craft beers, and community. Spokane, USA is developing into an international craft brewing city. No Lie is the + internationally award-winning brewery in America since 2020 with 155+ brewery medals. John has a 35-year plus industry track record that began in the Rainier Brewery in Seattle. Previous experiences include roles as the president of Oscar Blues Brewery, chief operating officer of Adele Brewing, and vice president of sales and marketing at Deschutes and Rainier Brewing brand, both. So thank you all for making the trek to Pullman. I know Spokane's an hour and a half. I know Walla Walla's too, so thank you all and welcome. So first question goes to you, Sarah, which is, can you discuss any past, recent, or future collaborations or partnerships between your company and other companies, beverage or other outside of beverage world, that has led to an innovative product, process, or marketing strategy?
I can. Everyone hear me okay? Sorry, this is new for me to have a microphone. So that's basically what we do, is we do collaborations, and we've done it for the last 12 years now. I'd say one of our largest ones that's been the most impactful is our collaboration with the Bravo Network, which we partnered with them to do 3 wines for their Housewives franchise shows. I don't know if any of you have heard of those. We've also done Vanderpump Girls, Kristen and Katie. We've done a wine with them. So those have been some really big ones that we've done over the years. And then most recently, we have 2 wines out with Snooki. I don't know if any of you guys know who that is, but from the Jersey Shore. So those are some really big partnerships that we've done, and basically they've given us the opportunity to just spread our audience nationwide, sometimes worldwide. So by them signing up to make a wine with us, we get a way bigger reach than just having a tasting room or a retail space.
I have to ask, how much do they actually engage in the making of it process?
Honestly, we involve them heavily. So I pull barrel samples, we send samples, we blend with them over Zoom. They can't always make it to Walla Walla, but we have sat down and done full blendings over Zoom with our collaborators. We would never let anyone just stick a label on a bottle and call it theirs. We fully have them involved in the whole process. And then they really take ownership of their wine and really feel like it's theirs, and that's how we want them to feel.
Either of you have some comments on collaboration, innovation?
There we go. As well, we do collaborative activity. Our very first one actually was with Noli. They were our old neighbor. So we primarily, when we're done with whiskey barrels, they go primarily to breweries for barrel-aged beer. And then we take the barrels back after they're done with them and do whiskey in them again. It's part of a series of products we call catch and release. So we sort of let the barrels go, bring them back in, and make this full circle. And then they can go back to the brewery again and again. It's basically an endless cycle. We've also done a bunch of other projects with other people, but that's probably the most notable one.
Ours probably first big one was prior to COVID. We teamed up with Jim Cook at Boston Beer, and he helped us develop our whole hard seltzer line. So it wasn't necessarily an economic exchange, but it was more of a share of ideas. And that's how we got our craft can cocktails that are seltzer based. And then we did our seltzer wash, but I couldn't have done it without the laboratory of Boston Beer. On a more local level, we do a brewing school with Eastern Washington University. And we bring in all the talent of Spokane craft brewers to participate, teach the classes. So they have a class of about 27 now. And it's a brewing program, so they can graduate that through program. They have just enough skills so they could go to, say, start at the entry level to say, Dryfly or a Noli or Palouse, pick a brewery. They could partake in that industry. And at a very small scale, we're now teamed up with Christian Jones at 4 a.m., which is a very small, what do you call it, like a legacy store of sportswear. It's in Spokane. He's a really young black entrepreneur who's doing some really cool stuff on a national level. He's from San Antonio, and we're lucky to have him in Spokane to bring, I don't know what the right term is, cultural awareness or just a vibe to our city. And so from a very large scale to very small scale, sometimes it's not about money, it's really a sharing of ideas and getting better.
Good. I think what you brought up there is, and you see this all over the hospitality industry, of the fact that Boston Brewing Company would share their time, energy, and resources, because when someone picking handles in Spokane and all around the country, they have a choice of you and or them, so that they would do that anyways. You know what I forgot to do was to actually have you all introduce yourself in 2 or 3 minutes or less. So we just jumped right into it because I know all of you, so I was really excited to start getting the answers. But if you would just take 2-3 minutes in who you are, where you're from, how you got here per se. I did give you the intro, but if there's anything that you need to add of why you're in this industry, and don't just say free alcohol because that's going to be universal.
It's a plus. No. I'm Sarah Harding. I was born and raised in Walla Walla, Washington, actually, with my twin brother, who is also an owner of the winery, along with our really good friend Stephen Amell, who played the Green Arrow on the show Arrow for 8 seasons on the CW. And I didn't go to WSU, but my daughter does. She's in the audience. She's a business major here. And yay, go Cougs! I went to California State University. I was a full scholarship tennis player there, and did that for most of my life after college. But about 2012, my brother and his friend Steven, who don't live in Walla Walla in wine country, called and said they wanted to start a winery, and I was going to do it. So that's how we got started. I dug in, and we started a winery. So it's been 12 years going and going strong.
Don Poffenroth. This is Dryfly's 17th year. We were the first distillery in the state of Washington since 1916, so the onset of prohibition in our state. So interestingly enough, we had to write our own laws to create our own industry. And I learned early on that if you go to Olympia with a lot of liquor, you can get almost anything done. So that's kind of our methodology. In the United States, in small distilling, we were the 10th small distillery in the U.S., so I think there's 3,000 now. So I used to know everyone. I don't anymore.
John Bryant, I'm a Coug, and my wife's a Coug right here, and we met at Wazoo. So let me see how we got here, Cindy. I'm not sure. I worked at the Coug. I lived above the Coug for a while. Our son's a Coug, yeah, so there's a lot of Cougar stuff going on. I don't know. It's been about a 36-year rodeo since getting out of here in about 1988, and it's been a heck of a road. We've lived across most of Western United States, traveled America a lot, and some international in the beer industry. It's crazy that it started in Pullman. My roots were I grew up 10 miles outside of the Olympia Brewery towards Shelton. So as a young kid, a lot of our social activities revolved around the Olympia Brewery or the kids I went to school with whose parents had worked there in packaging or brewing or marketing or what have you. So as a young kid in culture of beer, I was just around it. So it's always something that I've really loved. I think part of working at the Coug was I love that social environment of it. As you get older, you learn the business side more and more, and the business kind of sometimes soaks up the energy from your passion, which is making distilled spirits or beer, because you're just trying to keep your business going and branding it and building it. More than we could all go into today.
If I don't stop you, I know you can go all day. So, yeah. When you spoke in my class, I think you got to the third bullet point of 9. Don, can you give examples of innovative beverage products that have gained traction in the market in the recent past? What factors contributed to those successes?
I think when it comes to thinking about innovation, at least within our industry, we have to kind of take the first step. And the first step is to ensure that your core products are perfect, right? You can't innovate until your core products, your processes, how you do things is well established. Otherwise, you're innovating for the sake of innovating, and that just doesn't work. The other difficult thing about our industry is that there is so much innovation going on because there are gigantically huge companies with literally endless resources that can innovate, and it ultimately becomes this SKU proliferation project, right? It becomes, how do you get growth? You either acquire it or you create new products to get growth, because you need to have growth when you're a big company and you have shareholders that expect that. When we look at collaborative products and innovative products, we really look at just taking what our brand is, and our brand is fly fishing based. We're outdoors oriented. That's who we are. I fly fish. It's a real thing. It was either going to be Dryfly Distilling or the Dryfly Shoe Company or something. It was going to be that kind of a brand. But we are very authentic about that, and then we kind of core off of that. So an example is when we manufactured our first gin, right? Instead of trying to create a gin product that ultimately met the definition of gin, we wanted to do a gin that represented where we were from geographically. So all of our botanicals are grown in this state. So we didn't use common things that were found in gin. We used things that helped us tell a story about where we're from. So that's just one idea.
What was the question again?
Examples of innovative beverage products that have gained traction in the market in the recent past, and what factors contribute to their successes?
Yeah, in the beverage industry, 'cause it's such a social, probably like distilled spirit, it's such a social brand, and it's such a badge in a lot of ways. So when we started Noli and moved back to where Cindy was from in Spokane, all I know is I wanted to create something really special like Dawn in Spokane that wasn't just Spokane, it wasn't just a state, but was international. Like something great could come from Spokane. Like something great could come from Pullman, okay? You were, Pac-12, whatever, UCLA, USC, University of Spoiled Children. I mean, when you go up against those teams and you're in Pullman, you're not supposed to win. So when you create a brewery in Spokane, you're not supposed to win. So you already feel like sometimes you have a lot of weight going against you because it's been more sexy and glamorous to put a brewery where we've lived before in Fort Collins or Bend, because automatically you get status with that city. So what we had to do is create status, and that's really hard. So for us, it was, to Don's point, we have to make better and better beer. And for 5 years, I think we made okay beer. We did our best what we could. We did the best what we had. We do the best of what we knew. And then if you somehow get through that early days, and then you can use if you create some wealth, or you can get another loan or what have you, to get more experience. You get, outside professional labs to tear apart your product, to just rip it up, and then you go to work on those hot spots. And for the next 3 years, all I did was focus on hot spots in 2 breweries and just chase them down, which is actually more difficult than you think. to get everything to be really, really pure the way you want it. So to Don's point, it's about trying to create a world-class product. Number one, you have to start there, and that's forever a pursuit. And then you innovate, and innovation can come from styles of liquor or beer, package types. Like right now, we're in a 19.2 ounce can. We're really fortunate. We took the risk. We bought a really expensive piece of equipment, and we're the number one selling 19.2 in the state of Washington, outselling New Belgium now, in any local company. But that was a bet on R&D, and we've done others that didn't pay off. So the package type for that is innovation. And then also what type of beer you put in there stylistically is part of the innovation. And then how you go about your product quality and differentiation is part of the innovation. Branding in beers and liquor is super key, and that's part of the innovation. There's some things we do that I was just raised with, I think are basic ethics, work ethic and things that we drive through our brand and community. You could call that innovation because the thought process, probably a lot of people in this room, isn't that. I can sound like an old guy, but there's a lot of basic things that are supposed to be taught in kindergarten that have just been missed today. Conscientiousness, giving more than you take, quit being so self-orbited and self-serving, give to others till it hurts. Things that sound very cliche and tacky or cheesy or not authentic. But if you just add a little of that into your brand and it's real, to Don's point, living what's authentic to your brand, you don't have to bullshit because it's real. But like Don, we've had to feel a lot of pain along the way. It has not been an easy rodeo. And if you can get out of that rodeo, and you make it to the 8 count, then you can do something. So that's about it. We could talk all day, but I won't. I don't make everybody cry.
No, yeah, I completely agree. I think really thinking, like what he's talking about, just getting back to basics on ethics is huge. We've done the same thing. So many of our wines are charity based. We've done wines with Ashton Kutcher that's given back to his organizations. And I think really focusing on giving back is so huge and being innovative. And I think for us as well as, wine is such a traditional product and you don't really want to mess with that part of it. So being innovative in the wine industry, we come up with names and the packaging is super important. I know you touched on that, but packaging and the names and the labels are what we focus on to be innovative in the wine industry for sure.
Perfect. I have a question for you. You have some very innovative names of your wines. You can look them up. I won't use them because I might get in trouble by my boss. But there are some F words in some of your labels. Have you got any negative feedback from pushing that envelope in the traditionally, in the wine industry?
Honestly, zero, none. I have to say, so we tried to get really creative with it, and everyone went through COVID. We all know that was like a horrible time in our lives. So we made a sparkling wine called FU 2020.
FU 2020, sold out in minutes.
It did, and it means exactly what it says. And we all kind of held that sentiment after the 2019, 2020. And it was a popular one for us. And literally it was just because we were sitting around talking about how horrible COVID has been, especially for events and wanting to get together and for our tasting room. And somebody said FU 2020 and we all said we're making that one. So, we've gotten creative with other names, like even Snooki herself, her Messy Mama is such a good fit for her. We've made a wine with Drea De Matteo from The Sopranos, and she goes with Gangster Goddess. So we really try to be on brand with who we collab with, but also super creative and have the label tell a story, not just have the wine be the story.
All right, John, time for you to shine. I might have to cap you. You got a 5-minute timer. What role does market research and consumer feedback play in inspiring innovation in the beverage industry? And how do companies gather and utilize this information to develop new products or markets?
Okay.
Timer starts.
Timer
now.
goes, yeah. So now as it Deschutes evolved into kind of a numbers geek because the beer industry is so competitive, and you can have great products and you can have great branding, all that, but you have to know where to go. And there's the passion that gets you so far of, like Don said, doing your core brands that you started your company with, that something that you were born on. So Born and Raised IPA was a sounding board of our brand, quality, etc. But then we wanted to get analytical and really figure where the industry was going so we could get ahead of it, so we weren't always chasing or following trends. So we purchased what's called IRI scan data. And essentially, it is a poll from all the grocery stores. Everything has a UPC code on it. Everything you buy in a code in a store, everything gets scanned and it goes to a database. There's nothing sacred. It goes somewhere. We buy that, and then they do a poll of a region, and then it's up to me how we break it apart. And what it allows us to do is see what our biggest competitors do. That's a start. But then we start digging into what brands, what styles, which package types, what times of the year. I mean, we can literally break down every single purchase for the most part, how it happens and what it is. Then we can decide what fits with our passion wheelhouse for what we're good at, and where can we help actually lead the industry. So we're not always chasing a trend, we can actually maybe become it. And then with the 19.2 ounce cans was really part of that. There was not a regional brewery that was in that package type. And what was happening in the beer industry, it used to be 22 ounce bottles. That was the big thing in grocery stores. If you go to a store today that's a major store, they're almost all gone. And what's happened literally in a couple of years since COVID, they all went to 19.2 ounce cans. But it wasn't as easy as picking that because there's 24 ounce cans, there's 22 ounce cans, there's 16 ounce cans, there's all kind of cans. We just made the bet that 19.2 for a lot of reasons based on data pulled from the IRI, that was the way to go. So we invested about $500,000 in some can lines, but it could have been the wrong bet. We just got, fortunate, but data sent us that way. I also use that data to communicate with my retail chain buyers to let them know what they're buying. So if I want an ad in Safeway, which is a big deal for a company our size across Washington, what they want to know is how much dollars per case you give them for every 4 6-packs sold. They want to know that. They want to know what the rate of sale is. How fast will you turn that case? Because that square footage in that store is really valuable, and it could have a Dryfly product, it could have bologna on it, whatever. Why does it should be beer set, and why should it be no lie, and why should it be our brands? So I'm literally educating a buyer of why it's the best move, A, to have the craft beer industry, B, why no lie. But I have to come with like a loaded, arsenal of data that is fact-based, has to hold weight and be consistent, and I got to show my weaknesses too, so they believe that everything I'm polishing them isn't just polish. So I'll go in and say, we probably should get rid of this brand of no lie, it's Dragon, but if you'd be open to it, we have this innovation coming, I'd love to just exchange it out.
Yes.
Thank you.
Well done, John. Add to that my scenario of putting whiskey in a barrel and waiting for 8 years to try to find out if it worked or not, right? So that's an innovation, same kind of cost scenario John talks about, of trying to stay within your core of what you decide your brand to be, and then rolling the dice maybe on a mixture of grains or on a new grain variety. Our grain all comes within 30 miles of our facility, so hyper local as far as the growers are concerned. But a grower will come to us and say, I'm going to plant this, this variety of wheat, maybe that was developed right here at WSU, and I want you guys to try to make a whiskey out of it. I'm not going to know an answer for 4 or 5 years. I can sort of taste it coming off the still, but I really don't know what happens in that barrel until it happens in the barrel.
So this is going to be open to all, so whoever wants to grab the microphone and go first. How are you or others in the beverage industry leveraging sustainable practices and environmentally friendly packaging to appeal to those environmentally conscious consumers? So you got it.
I think it was a little bit over 5 years ago, we switched to 100% screw cap because it's recyclable. We stopped using cork for sustainability purposes. We use 100% recycled glass, so any glass that we get has been recycled and it can be recycled. We take that pretty serious. We always source our grapes from vineyards that are biodynamic vineyards that are salmon safe. We actually pride ourselves on the sustainability aspect of what we do, and we've made those decisions and switched 100% to everything being sustainable in our products.
We do the same things. I mean, we look and think about the exact same things, and we were fortunate to have built a new facility within the last couple of years. The good side of that is you get to take advantage of technology that has come into existence since we became a company. So we're able to do things in terms of our waste stream and things like that didn't even exist when we started in 2007, and today do. So I think that makes us a better community member. And then we always look at packaging and trying to be the least impactful we can be in that. And a little bit different for us in that we use a lot of glass. We use heavy glass. And part of that is just the branding proposition and where you want your product to be in the marketplace. In other words, you could, if your package doesn't belly up to the $40 a bottle whiskey, the package will ruin the consumer decision. It just won't happen. So the labeling, the branding, all those components go into helping that consumer make a decision. And it may be different on a $15 bottle of wine or a $30 case of beer than it is on a $70 bottle of whiskey. Just a different mindset.
We got lucky. Our banker actually has a farm with a bunch of cattle out in Sprague. So he comes twice a week with a trailer to both breweries, and he picks up all the spent grain, what we call trub, which is all the yeast and all the dry hopping. We pull that aside, and he pulls it away from each brewery twice a week. It goes out to Spangle, out by Spangle. And then they mix it up with some other proteins, and then he resells it to some cattle farmers and pigs and sheep, and it gets reused in the process. So, which has been a big help to us, because for breweries and distilleries, we have a byproduct that if you can treat and it can benefit the ecosystem, then we're good to go.
Okay, to kind of flip this conversation, what do you think is causing the rise in demand for non-alcoholic, low-alcohol offerings, and how is it impacting the traditional alcoholic beverage market? And what are you or others doing to meet this growing demand?
We don't participate. Well, actually, we just made, by mistake, quite honestly, a no-alcohol product. It's just not something, and for us, especially in canned product, that ultimately becomes a soda, and I am not even remotely efficient enough to do that as a manufacturer. We recognize it. We during January, especially dry January, we offer non-alcohol cocktails in our pub, but that's pretty much our involvement in it. We're an alcohol company, so it's hard for me to talk about that.
The question was, why do we think there's the...
Why do you think those trends are there, and or if you're doing anything to respond to it, or why? What's your thought on why?
We've looked into this pretty extensively, and I think there's just a real uptick in people caring about their health a lot more than in the past. And I also personally think that the legalization of marijuana has really led to people choosing less alcohol options. I think with wine, we're a little bit lucky because we've always had the good rap of wine's good for you in moderation. So we do have that on our side. But I think that people are just kind of trying to find healthier options and not wanting to wake up the next day and feel like they didn't make a good choice. So, and they don't get that with marijuana. So I think that's led to people making those choices for sure and opting out of alcohol.
Except eat more chips and pizza.
I agree. Okay, there you go. I agree with all of it. Well, in a sense, you're doing. I mean, your cocktails in a can, your RTDs. I mean, that's offering your product a different packaging, a different thing, but it's much lower alcohol than all the fancy
and
brown
ultimately
sauce
the objective was really based around our brand, right? And that is we wanted to take Dryfly on the river, right? So I was one of the guys in my drift boat that maybe had a bottle of whiskey, but that's not common. To have a Yeti cooler full of beer, absolutely common. So that was our ability to take kind of Dryfly on the river, plain and simple. So that was kind of our thought process behind that. And we've aimed our canned cocktails at kind of beer level alcohol levels. So we don't do 12, 14% canned cocktails. We think it's irresponsible. 2 canned cocktails and you just drank a bottle of wine all by yourself. So it's a little bit problematic just from a branding perspective for us. So we've aimed more kind of at the lower alcohol level. And also taking into consideration, we tell our customers all the time is, the 3%, 5% alcohol in beer, wine, spirit is all exactly the same compound. I mean, alcohol is alcohol. It doesn't, I always kind of get this cringe when I hear the word hard alcohol. It's all the same. It's just how you measure it.
Let's put your futuristic hats on. Looking ahead, what do you envision the next big innovation or trend is going to be within the beverage industry? And then what influence will this change have on the future of the market?
My opinion is, and this is somewhat coming out of the food industry because I saw it happen as well, it's going to be packaging. I mean, I think you can only innovate to a certain degree in products, and a lot of stuff has been done. I don't expect any of us are going to come up with a totally new way to make beer, maybe different styles of beer. Same thing with wine. You know, those practices are pretty well tied down. But packaging is probably the area that's going to offer us the most innovation, less waste, some better delivery methods to take to market.
What do you see, so this is just on that, as far as bringing things to market, obviously there's always wine clubs, right? Everyone has a wine club, but with subscription-based services being such a real thing in all facets of our life, do you see that expanding more? I mean, you see it in wine. We do it in wine, and we do it well in wine. But the others, there's people out there playing in that space. Do you see that growing, or would you ever participate in such a thing?
I can take that one. I think right now we aren't seeing a huge growth in subscription. I think it's because discretionary income is people don't have it these days with the rise in food costs and the rise in a lot of other costs, gas costs, everything going up, housing costs. I think people are taking out some of the fun things in their life that they pay for on a monthly basis that come to their door, and they're kind of picking and choosing what they spend their fun money on, which is low these days. So right now we aren't seeing a huge uptick in subscription, but I think once if things turn around, that's they'll come back to doing those types of things. So we really just stick with we have our club and we have our loyal members, but the growth is just not what it used to be, and we pretty much know that's those factors. So we are concentrating on DTC and newer collabs.
DTC, direct to consumer, is really just starting in the spirit world. And actually, by US law, you can't cross a state border. That being said, there are some legal maneuverings that can happen on the behalf of retailers to ultimately say, once you pay me, you take possession, even though it's in my building, right? You take title of the product. That's one way that it's happening in the spirit world. And I think there's probably just a common movement towards being able to kind of abolish parts of our three-tier system. Meaning, if a consumer, especially on a higher-end product or something that's super niche-y or a specialty item, and you want to get distribution on that, I mean, the process, as John can tell you, to go into the distribution world is onerous. I mean, it's very difficult. It's a lot easier sometimes to go direct to the consumer. I have a little bit of advantage over these two guys. My product is not perishable in any way, meaning that, a bottle of vodka is as good as the day it was made as 10 years later, for the most part.
And I think there's a movement to local, supporting local, fresh. So for craft beer, we don't pasteurize it, we don't boil it, which is what the big breweries do. So their shelf life can be a year. So it's a living product. It's great as long as for 4 months, it's great. It won't hurt you after that. Just your peak freshness is done. So the consumer is smart enough to figure out, with all these options of all these breweries, the freshest beer is the best beer. And so you look at when we started Noli, there was about 1,500 breweries in America. Today there's 10,000. So most of those do under, say, 500 barrels a year. So they're pretty small. But you can go get that locally in Pullman or Spokane or pick your city. So I think a lot of people are favoring local, fresh, that movement versus something that gets mailed to you, a beer that could be 6 months old and not as good.
For some reason, Don, because I think I know your past during Rona, here's the question for you. What challenges do beverage companies face when introducing new products to the market? And then how do you deal with supply chain disruptions, ingredient sourcing, and production scalability?
That's a great question. Listen, we face challenges and we do about 40 states worth of distribution. And, if we're going to be honest about it, the Pacific Northwest is 45% of that. The other 55% is spread all over amongst 30 some other states. So getting that distribution system to function, I think, is purely a matter of horsepower. In other words, the more horsepower you have, the more time that you've had a distributor, the more developed that relationship is, the easier it is. But it still is not in any way easy. On the supply chain side, we have gotten big enough, luckily, to source glass in multiple containers to deal with canning like John does at a high level where we can go to pre-printed cans. The difference between a sleeve can and a pre-printed can is 12 cents. A can literally changes the game of how you shelf price. We're a little bit locked in with what happens in the farms out here, but the yields across the Palouse have been pretty damn consistent for a long, long time. So it usually is not an issue. We'll see changes in the market based upon worldwide issues that may affect pricing. So bushel of grain, we've averaged since the day we started about $6 a bushel. It was as high as 15, as low as 4.30. So the market is all over the place, and it can just be one country having a bad crop year affects the entire world on soft white winter wheat.
Oh no, I think it got it working here. Yeah, I got that. Perfect. I'm a tech head. Just kidding. During COVID, what was crazy about how it hit so fast was if you had to be at a certain size to get what you wanted, you had to scale. So let's say there's roughly 325,000 pre-printed cans on a semi-truck. If you're a smaller craft brewery, you don't need 325,000 cans of one brand. So if you had scale, though, and you could commit to, as we did, 40 trucks in a year, and we could commit to paying net one, I got them. So literally when COVID hit, we made sure we had day one pay. The same can company then got rid of craft breweries about our size or less who were 90 days or 60 days past due and couldn't commit to so many trucks because what they wanted to do was get lean, mean, and just print fewer things and make money. So COVID, we actually grew quite a bit because we were able to secure our cans and we never ran out. But we had to go essentially borrow $1 million to, Don knows this, to secure 40 trucks and then start paying early before the revenue came in. So it's a dance. And it's, again, that's a risk, but we made it through. Malt went through the roof with the war in Ukraine to bad harvest to whatever's going on in the climate. There's been a lot of really bad in Canada, really bad malt, and there's all kinds of malt. There's high-grade malt that you use. There's feed for cattle, and a lot of that high-grade barley malt became feed because of the weather. So then that spikes up your grain, and that supply chain and procurement became like a sole job for somebody to make sure, A, we never ran out of cans, lids. So Georgetown Brewing, which is much larger than us in Seattle, actually horse traded them a pallet of cans so they could stay open for 4 days. And they're like, literally you could say they're my biggest competitor, but they're really not. We're friends and they do an amazing job. So helping somebody I have a lot of respect for is a no-brainer. I just almost had to like get it in blood that I would get them back in 3 weeks, right? Or I would be out. So there's a leap of faith when you're giving somebody something that literally will take you out of business if you don't get it back. That's a big leap of faith. And those things happened during COVID.
One kind of a resounding theme here is that the word is relationship, right? We had amazing relationships with people. So during COVID especially, but even today, I don't write people emails, nor do I text them. I call them on the phone and talk to them. If I have an issue or if I have something I really need to deal with, and I want that one-on-one relationship, and we're going to take that over any other communication pattern, because when it comes down to them making a decision of who they send cans to or not, the fact that they like John in Spokane makes a difference.
Ditto. The relationships that you form out of the gate when you start a business is so huge, and you need to really try to not burn bridges and help each other out as well. If they need something that you can give them, help them, because when you need help, they're there for you. And we had the same experience during COVID with sourcing glass and needing a large amount of glass, and we got it because we had great relationships. So it's huge.
All right, I have one last question that you can all get up on your pedestals for before we open it up to the students. What should our students know about the future of the industry? And if a student was interested in a career in the beverage industry, what should they be doing right now to be prepared in themselves? And a little bit of advice, however you would like to educate them on the opportunities.
I think if you're wanting to get into the food and beverage, especially the alcohol industry, I would be thinking about what your generation what appeals to you guys? That's something that we constantly try to figure out, because your generation is different. You're younger. We're always trying to figure out what the younger crowd is into. And so really, when if you're thinking about starting a business, an alcohol business, or think about what appeals to you and your friends, and stick with that. Don't try to think about what the older generations would want, or don't try to think about what other people would want. Stick to what you like and stick to what your friends like. I'm constantly asking my daughter, like, is this cool? Like when we try to come up with like cool names and things, because I want it to appeal to, the Gen Z generation, because you're the ones that are coming up that are going to be, customers and consumers. And so I think just really focusing on what you think is cool and go with that.
We're fortunate in beverage alcohol, at least, that a lot of people want to work in our industry, right? So that creates a good thing and a bad thing. Good thing is great pools of candidates available, right? Bad thing is we necessarily don't have to pay the highest wages in the world in our industry, because the supply of candidates is incredibly high. When we go for technical people, obviously that's a different thing. But if you're going to go start working at the brewery or the distillery, you're not going to start as the head brewer or the lead distiller. I mean, you're going to start washing things and doing those kind of unfun things, for sure. So I think that's just the reality of where we're at. I'm a big believer in networking. I mean, you can network as a student with either business owners or even amongst yourself. That will pay you dividends in the future, for sure. And don't be afraid to come up and talk to us. I mean, if you're in Spokane and you want to come to Dryfly, just come in and say hi, and we'll take you around, show you around, and at least tell you what it's like.
So I wish I would have known this back then. For the first year, you're a liability. Seriously. So that's not to be mean-spirited. It's not to inject you with humility, but you come out, so you got an IQ of 170, don't care. What we need you to do is to learn with humility, to observe, have social awareness, because eventually, as you grow in this company or that company, it's really what's in your mind and your heart and your spirit that's going to add value to a company. But you first have to get a lay of the land and understand where you're at. And that just takes time, days on the planet. Study on your own time. Don't ask to be paid for everything. Show up early, stay late. Don't ask for time off all the time, because your life balance becomes my imbalance. So we have 90 people that work there, and if everybody's got a mental issue because of COVID, I'm going to be a little broad here, excuse me for being too straightforward. If everybody's got an issue, because everybody's got an issue, and everybody has permission to just dump that in the workplace, and everybody needs this vacation off, everybody needs this holiday, pretty soon it's just completely overwhelming how you even stay open. So understand the first few years, your job is, the old school was pay your dues. It's not even that. It's to be there in the rough times to learn. It's to be there in the difficult times to learn. You're not going to learn if it's Monday through Friday and 8 to 5. You're not. You need to be there on the weekend. You need to be there when the can line goes down at 2 a.m. You need to be in those times, because it teaches you patience. It teaches you grit. It teaches you analytical problem solving when there's pressure. You don't want it always served up to you on a plate, or you're not going to be good. And you're only hurting yourself. So get that tough shit out of the way early. And then you start adding value, because you can say, hey, remember that time we were at 3 a.m. and that thing went down and you called Steve and we got this going on? Then you start kind of putting things together, and then you become an asset. But what I try to explain to the GU kids that come next door, and they're smart kids too, is you're a liability. And some get kind of mad at me. I wish I would have known that coming out of what I did. Somebody just said, hey, just put it this way, you're a liability. Because the humility right away is, oh shit, this guy needs me to just shut up, listen, and learn. And then maybe I can add something through all my study. Is that okay?
I think it's perfect. I always tell my new employees, or even the employees when we meet together, is I want you to treat Dryfly like it's your company. I want you to be an entrepreneur. The best employees I have come to me with ideas. I don't have to ask them. They'll see what's going on day to day and say, I think there's a better way to do this. I think there's a new way we can look at things. Man, as a business owner, that just makes your heart sing right there.
To add to that, when I hire people to pour in the tasting room, and it's usually younger, people like you, you can tell who's gotten online and looked at our tasting notes before they've come in and know the wines and know who we've already collabed with and know what we're about. So don't show up not knowing a lot about the company, especially if you're going to be the one informing their customers about their product. You need to already know that, and don't expect to learn that in trainings. I'm not going to sit down with every person that comes in for a job and go over our wines and teach them our tasting notes. Of course, I'm going to show you what you should be saying and how we'd like you to present yourself, but you should be doing your own homework and learning the wines and learning, how we like them to be told, the stories to be told to our customers. And that's all online. Everybody's site, I'm sure, has all the information you even ever need.
Just one more. John and I are going to fight over the microphone. How many people think they'd like to start their own company? Just raise your hand. The thing you have to consider when you start your own company, first of all, and John, I think, is the same way. I don't want to speak for him. He can add, but I'm an anti-business plan person. Man, I think a business plan is 2 or 3 pages, not 45, and it doesn't have graphs and all that other stuff. I mean, it's just talk about the heart and soul of what you want to do.
You won't pass 358 with that.
Yeah, well, that's right. I'm just speaking reality. Now, things you have to do for your banker and your finance people, that's entirely different. That's a whole different part of it. The other thing I wish I would have learned when I started, and I've learned it here now at 60-some years old and wanting to retire, is it is 10 times harder to leave a business, a small business, than it is to start it. 10 times harder. So starting Dryfly, could start 100 of them in the amount of time it's taken me to try to figure out how to get out.
Amen. Yeah, let's just say we have $4 million of equipment. If I liquidated tomorrow, I might get $50,000. So to his point, it's way easy to get into something. It's really hard to get out. I'll give you 2 success stories, though. So I'm not the grumpy old crusty guy who's been beaten up by the industry. First one is we hired a guy who was our server 10, 11 years ago. Worked at a brewery, dabbled in some production, wrecked a brewery car, didn't tell me about it, left, whatever. Left for 4 years, came back, and he goes, I got to be honest with you, I wrecked that car. I'm like, yeah, I know, it came through on my insurance. And he goes, I really want to make this right. I've grown up a lot. I've got a kid now, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, God, here we go again. But I brought him back, and he's one of our best people. But he had to go away and understand what it was like then to come back. And he's way better, and he's awesome, and he's one of our best people. So there are success stories. You can fail, so please fail. I've failed a whole bunch in my life, so fail. And don't be afraid to fail. As soon as you're afraid to fail, you're not going to be very good. So that's the first thing. Just be afraid to fail. You can apologize to yourself. You learn from it. You're fine. We hired a young, I'm going to call him young, a GU senior to help in some marketing stuff with us. And again, it took about 5 months to get the person to really understand who we are, not understand who she is. Like, she wanted to bring all her personality in the brewery. It's like, we're not you, okay? This is what we are, and you need to reflect this culture. But we'd love you to tap into your brain to help us enlarge our culture. So she's blowing up TikTok with our marketing guy. We got stuff with 6 million views, and I have no idea, but I heard that's pretty good. So I don't understand them. They're really short. They're ADD, but they work, and they're kind of funny. So that was the thing where she had to then, this person, learn I don't care about you entertaining your friends. I want you to take our brand and make it grow. Kind of make sense?
Well, you got more? Keep going.
Just one quick thing. Yeah, I am on a roll. Man, so exciting. John nailed it on the head, man. You have to fail. This is not a 1,000% or 100% success business in any way, shape, or form. I mean, it is a big part of our culture. I mean, we talk about, hey, what'd you screw up on today? And we all learn from that. Adults learn from screwing up.
Well, thank you all for wonderful, wonderful answers. Do we have, just to be honest, if you do have to leave in 4 minutes to get to your 110 class, do it quietly. If you don't lie about it. Hang out for another 10 or so minutes, and we'll get you out of here very soon. Questions from the crowd and/or questions from Zoom?
I have a 110 class. I gotta leave soon, but I know Heritage Distillery has had a large success with their cask club in personalizing the product for individuals. Have you ever thought about doing that in a subscription base? I know you said something about cross state lines, but have you ever thought about personalizing the product?
It's difficult. We do more personalizing, maybe less consumer-oriented and more customer-oriented, i.e. a liquor store. So we'll do private barrel selections that maybe a blending program happens that specifically, no different than they do with wine, for a specific customer group. For us, we're just not attuned to doing small barrel, individual level things. And it's somewhat onerous, right? You understand about whiskey, maybe it costs us $1,000 to make a barrel of whiskey. Every year it doubles in value, right? So it gets hard for a consumer to come make a $7,000 purchase and then have to deal with packaging it someday.
Thank you.
Other questions, or is there questions from the Zoom world?
Hi, thank you so much for the talk, and I really enjoyed. I'm a faculty here in hospitality, and one of the projects that I do was related to the employing virtual reality technology and augmented reality for wine product. So I wonder whether you have done any kinds of marketing effort or any kinds of technology that you have in your mind for the products that you have?
In the wine world? I missed part of it. Did you say virtual or AI?
Yes.
I mean, other than I
the
use
augmented
AI,
reality in the wine labels, or maybe utilizing the virtual reality for your tasting rooms.
You know, honestly, to be honest, we have not. We have sourced a ton of AI for our marketing efforts, but we have not dove into the virtual reality world for wine. Yeah.
I would love to talk with you later.
That'd be great. Let's do it.
Howdy. This quick question about, you guys mentioned how the legalization of marijuana has affected maybe some sales, or at least in our generation anyway. Do you see the CBD drinks like affecting, like especially for beer? Do you see that being a bigger competitor in the near future?
Well, it's tied up between the feds and the state. So Washington, you can't do it. Could it be someday? Sure. Right now, I think it's just sold basically at weed shops, I believe. Is that how it goes down? So it's pretty, I think Bale Breaker tried one. I don't think it did very well. I think there's a concern of what you're actually getting in that can. You got to make sure that the dosage, for lack of a better degree, or I don't know. I don't smoke a lot of weed, so I don't know. I'll pass it off. Who smokes a lot of weed?
I don't smoke a lot of weed. John hit it exactly right, and it's one of the most onerous things about the cannabis industry is that it's not federally approved, right? So that puts barriers in place in the banking arena, puts barriers in place in other things, crossing state lines, et cetera, et cetera. You know, me and my business, I could sort of do whatever I want to as long as I fit within a legal system, but we're really hindering that industry and letting it even start to go, because until the U.S. government decides, and they will someday, that they're going to start taxing it federally and have an excise tax that covers that product category, it's not going to happen.
Make it a good one, no pressure.
This is actually from the Zoom webinar.
Oh, okay.
They say, I have no questions at this time, but I appreciate the opportunity to observe the panelists and learn about the ins and outs of the adult beverage industry.
Thank you.
Well, I can't find a better way to end it than that. So I was going to say roughly the same thing, but I think the student, whoever they were out there in Zoomland, did it very well. So yes, thank you all very much for your time, energy, and resources to make this happen.